Dear viewers, welcome to the third installment in the BUSTTMAM series. And I'm immediately going to have to start this video with a confession. Between the last video and this one, I've been fumbling with my machine a bit more. What you saw in last video, that was the version 2 of this factory. Now, however, it's been upgraded to not 3, not 4, but version 5, which is even faster than the previous versions were. Now, the good news is that part of the improvements have happened in areas that I haven't discussed with you yet, so in that sense, you as a viewer wouldn't be confused about that. Other changes, however, do relate to stuff we've seen in video number 2, so I kind of feel obligated to talk about that first. You know, just bring you up to speed about the changes, about the new version 5 of this machine. The first thing I did is rework the buffering system. So if you recall from last video what it looked like, it looks a lot different now. I reduced the footprint of the entire buffering mechanism so that I could build my physical factories closer together. Okay. A big part of what makes a factory fast in this game is just the sheer, pure distance that shapes have to travel from start to finish, right? If you make your factories more compact and you do it in a way that reduces overall shape travel distance, then that usually results in a faster factory, right? And even though that makes sense, I mean, this feature plays a pretty important role in this game. So, shorter travel distance, faster factory. In a lot of cases, it's just as simple as that. Now, the factories themselves have also changed. And the first important pillar is the final stacker. So let's move to that, right? The final stacking array. Here it is, right? This thing. So, as you know, this TMAM is built on a principle that will prepare up to 4 pieces, so to speak, plus an optional 5th layer, so up to 5 pieces in total. And then in the final step, this stacking step right here, those 5 pieces are stacked together. However, the stacking process for this final step is a science in its own right, because the pieces may be stacked in a variety of ways, and while sometimes more than one approach can lead to the same desired outcome, there are other times where the order is a lot more strict and only one specific method, only one specific approach may work. Now, in the version 2 of last video, the final stacker, this one, consisted of no less than 8 stacking modules. However, for any given shape, only a maximum of 5 of those stacking modules would ever be used simultaneously. And, well, now, with this new rocket kind of design, I managed to bring the number of stacker modules down from 8 to 5. This involved a lot of thinking because I needed a clever rerouting approach so that the correct pieces would always get presented to the correct stackers in the correct order, right? But this is what it looks like now, and it works like a charm. In later videos, when we get to talking about the wiring a bit more, I will likely revisit this stacker array with you so we can have a behind the scenes of how the rerouting mechanisms are set up exactly. So, that's that. A second considerable change in the physical factory is found in the input lines as well as the initial stacking step, right? So let's go there. Here are the input lines and the first stacking step. Let's start this up. We're gonna get back to what this is exactly, but right now I want to have a look at this with you. So, with the way this machine works, the first stacking step of any given piece consists of pairing the actual quadrant from the shape with a scaffolding counterpart, right? If the first piece in question is a flat piece, then this step will be bypassed entirely. But if it's a floating piece, then the first step will have to be this scaffolding step, right? Now, my reasoning was that a scaffolding piece can always be the same piece. In my case, it's always an uncolored circle quadrant, right? And the only variation for this scaffolding comes in the form of the corner that we need this scaffolding part in, right? So top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, but nothing else. So in both, shape and color, this scaffolding can be whatever, so it can always be the same thing too. And in my case, that's an uncolored circle quadrant. So I thought to myself, how about instead of rotating the scaffolding piece in accordance to where it needs to go, which is dependent on the actual shape, which is what I have been doing up to here. What if I flip it around and I rotate the actual piece in accordance to the scaffolding? Because that way I can have a full scaffolding line queuing and ready to go at any given time, and that will speed up the process because one of both candidates is already waiting and ready to go. So the slowest piece will always be the actual shape quadrant and will never have to wait for the scaffolding bit to move through to the end of the line, which results in reduced processing time before this initial stacking step outputs a full belt into the next module. All right. Now this left me with two other considerations left to make. The first one is that I needed a bypass mechanism in case we're dealing with a flat piece. And the way I solved that is by placing a filter after every stacker. These are the filters. So if we deal with a flat piece, like is the case on screen right now, then the filters will close and they will stop all of the stacked output in its tracks. And what that will result to, let's press the start button again. What that will result to is that the actual quadrants of the actual shape, they get forced through this output line, right? Let's have a look at an example. So this is floating, this is floating. I think everything is floating at the moment. Okay, but anyway, if we are dealing with a flat piece, then these filters will close and the bottom line will move through to the next module. If we are dealing with a floating piece, like we can see on screen now, then these filters will open up, and in return, in exchange, this filter right here, these filters, they will close, and that will keep the machine from bleeding any of the shapes, and all of the shapes are forced into the stackers, right? That's how we output that full belt. And then the last thing I needed to do is, since now these scaffolding bits are always going to be in the top right corner, it could be any corner, but I decided on top right, I also needed this small rotating array behind that. And what that is going to do is, well, it's going to rotate the scaffolding bit, which is always going to be the top right. It's going to rotate that into the shape that we actually need in our piece, right? Now, the wiring for this wasn't exactly easy, but I feel like it might be a better idea to have a look at that one in one of the upcoming videos as well. These are the you know, the most important changes, maybe I changed some little bits here and there, but they're not really important. So that's what I wanted to talk about. That is the main difference between version 2 of last video and version 5 of this video. But there are a few more things that I would like to discuss today, and those things are a few more mods. You know, last video, or the first video in this series, I spoke about mods quite a lot, and there are a few more mods that I decided to play around with in this version 5 machine that I also want to have a look at with you today. And the first one I want to take out and highlight a bit is the new sandbox mod. So previously I had a sandbox mod by Atrium installed. I replaced it with the so-called micro sandbox by Denger. It's essentially the same principle, you know, sandbox, you could choose your level freely, you can choose your upgrades freely. But I feel like layout-wise, it's just a bit cleaner. It's, you know, you can place it neatly in the bottom left corner here. I updated I customized the layout a bit. So yeah, that's that. That's the micro sandbox by Denger. And then the second thing I want to talk about is this thing right here. This is also a mod made by Denger, and it's the level timer mod. Now what it does, as you may have seen, is it's going to time your levels, and it has an interesting mechanic to it that it also toggles the hub signal. So right now the timer is running, and if it is, then the hub signal is enabled, but if the timer is not running, it's actually going to disable the hub signal. So let's wait for a minute until this shape gets processed. Come on now. There we go. So now level 4 has been completed, and we can see if we go to the wiring level, the hub signal is actually disabled, right? And as soon as we hit the timer again for level 5, boom, there we get the hub signal again. Now this timer mod is, as I understand, a work in progress, so this is a temporary version of what will someday become a more fleshed out version. It has 2 modes. I am running it in manual mode. It also has an automatic mode, which I understood is more aimed towards like speedrunners of shapes, which I am not, so I am using the manual mode. Anyway, I think it's a really nice gimmick. Maybe I can convince Denger to, you know, customize it to my personal tastes a bit more. We'll see how much influence I can exert. But that's that. That's the level timer mod. A third mod I want to talk about is actually a very nice one. It's by Skimner-Fi, and it's the Node Zapper. The Node Zapper, what it does is it will strip your entire map from all of the, you know, source points. Usually any shapes map has, you know, spawn points for certain shapes and colors, and the Node Zapper gets rid of that. And the first thing is that, you know, it looks a lot cleaner. This is a mod that you can use if you have a certain project on a map that doesn't rely on physical extraction points. You know, like in this case, I have this project. I am working with item spawners, so I don't need the, you know, the actual extraction points on the map. And not only is this, you know, it looks a lot cleaner visually when you zoom out, but there is also a tiny performance advantage attached to that. Because if you zoom out, then, you know, the game engine has to draw all of these things on screen, and it uses CPU, you know, and it drops your frame rate a little. So apart from the visual appeal, that the map looks a lot cleaner, there is also a slight performance enhancement. So that's that. That's the Node Zapper. If this is something you can use, I would absolutely recommend it. It's this, you know, fun little mod. It doesn't do much except make gameplay easier on the eyes. In my case, I prefer I prefer using it. It's very nice. The next mod I want to talk about is also a mod by Skim. It's called the YAP mod, or YAP stands for Yet Another Producer. And you know, it's a jab at the amount of item producer mods that there are. And we talked about the item producer last time, right? So the standard item producer is this one. There we go. So you get this building, and then on the wiring layer you can connect a wire to it or a constant signal, right? And then it outputs that. Now what the YAP mod does by Skim is that it offers an alternative to this one, and that is actually the item producer that comes with the puzzle DLC, if you have it or if you know it. So in the puzzle DLC for Shapez, this is what the item producer looks like. So it's been brought to the regular gameplay mode as well, and the advantage of this item spawner is that it has its constant signal built in to the actual unit, and it doesn't require any any wiring. It doesn't require any constant signal on the wiring layer. That's the way I should phrase it. So this comes with the added advantage that if we look at the inputs, which are right here, there is no conflict on the wiring layer, right? So my item producers, they are all right here. And with a regular item producer, this one, because of the constant signal, you have to account for that on your wiring layer. So you need to free up some space on the wiring layer to place your producers on the physical layer. And with this one, you don't have to do that. So that's that's just convenient, right? Along with this item producer, we also have the goal acceptor, which is basically a variant on the trash can, right? So in the menu, you have your trash can, and the goal acceptor is also, harbored in that menu. So what it does is it basically, accepts shapes or whatever kind of input, and it throws that into a parallel dimension, never to be seen again, just like the trash can does. But the difference is that it has a built-in display that shows you what it currently is accepting. And this is convenient because what I used to do, especially if shapes are traveling very fast and you have a lot of different shapes on the wire, on the belt, you might actually not see what the actual shape is. So what I used to do was I would have to add a belt reader and then a display on that, like so that when you have, variable input, you can see what that input is. But again, also here, these things take up space and have connections on the wiring layer. So you can't just crisscross your wirings and your virtual units through belt readers, and with the goal acceptor, you don't have that problem either. So not a huge deal, but in more than one way, it is more convenient to work with. So I quickly wanted to highlight that. And then the final mod I would like to talk about in this video is the TMAM Gauntlet mod. You may or may not have noticed, but the level I am at is currently level 7, which means I am at the fixed gameplay story mode levels. Usually free play starts at level 27, which I am not at. I am below level 27. And that is because I am running the TMAM Gauntlet mod. Now, I would like to say that this is a collaboration between Skimner and myself, but truth be told is that he does all of the programming and I just do all of the suggesting and criticizing. That's basically what it comes down to. Now, he did custom make this mod for me, which I am very grateful for. And what the Gauntlet mod does is I have handcrafted a series of 30 shapes that are particularly hard to do, floating shapes with floating layers, and I have lined them up in levels 1 through 30. Right? And the Gauntlet mod, the purpose of the Gauntlet mod is basically to stress test any TMAM that you might build in this game. Right? So I handpicked these shapes. They are still randomized in terms of which shapes it picks and which colors, and also which rotations and mirrors, but the structures are always the same. Right? So the approach you need to build these 30 specific shapes, that is always going to be constant, right? So this is a temporary version of the Gauntlet mod. I hope that it will get fleshed out in the future still. I hope I will get to work on that with Skimner Fi a bit, and especially in combination with the level timer mod that Denger made. I feel like there is a robust system finally to objectively measure how fast a machine, in this case a TMAM, is. Because what the timer does, this is also something convenient that I didn't mention, it takes your frame rate into account. So if you have a low frame rate, then the timer will actually also slow down. So it times in accordance to that, which makes it pretty objective, because in earlier videos, I remember having ranted on about how unfair it is that if you have poor performance, you have a poor computer or, computing skills in your device, then that is going to affect, your measurements, and you're going to have longer times for a machine that might actually be pretty good. And this, this balances that out a bit, so I like that very much. Now, I feel like I have been rambling on for long enough. That's what I wanted to talk about. So from now on, BUSTTMAM version 5. I hope this will be the last version, and we will not be at version a gajillion by next video. Okay, so fingers crossed for that. But for this video, I wanted to highlight these few mods. I have a few other mods installed, like, maybe you noticed that these buildings have a certain color. This is also a mod by Denger that I will not get into. But what I do want to highlight is, especially Denger and Skim's mods. I feel like they are really contributing strongly to the mod game, to the mods update. And the thing is, they also host and run their own websites, and you cannot always find their mods on the shapes.mod.io webpage, right? There are a few other mods like this, like for example, this trash fixer mod. It's super simple, but it always rotates your trashes so that the trash can icon is upright, which is just for people that have, a certain extent of OCD. It's nice to have the machine do that, the game do that automatically. So that if you rotate your stuff, like this, you always get the trash in the upright direction. Stuff like that. That's what they do. I really think it's nice. So I'm going to put the links to their websites in the description, and I'm going to call it a day for this video. In the next video, we are finally going to dig in deeper to how this BUSTTMAM works exactly on the molecular level. And well, I hope you are interested to see that. For today, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to thank you for watching. I'm going to say I hope to see you then and there. And for today, I wish you have a lovely day. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.